skies in wonder at his place in the universe. And woman too. Good morning, I'm Sian Williams with Sunday Morning Live, where today we have an elevated view of the world from up here on the roof of BBC Broadcasting House. It's for Space Week, where we're all encouraged to look to the big beyond. Back with Emmerdale star Fiona Wade talking about bullying, faith and marriage.
We need to get on this.
On Earth and the warmth of our studio. Is there any life out there? Hardeep Singh Kohli can tell us. Not as any of us know it. Thanks, Hardeep. We'll be back there soon. We want to know what you think about the discussion coming up too. You can comment by phone, text, email or through Twitter, Facebook or space travel has always held a fascination. It used to be the work of fiction until Yuri Gagarin became the first man to orbit the Earth over half a century ago. And since then, we've put a man on the moon, we've sent probes to planets, and there's an international space station floating somewhere above us too. Exploring the cosmos is almost routine, but there is still an excitement and relief when space voyagers come back to Earth, as Professor Brian Cox reveals in his upcoming BBC series. Here, he joins a recovery team greeting 3 crew members of the space station as they land in the snow of Kazakhstan. And last week, India took a giant leap in that so much money is being spent out there when there's so much poverty and deprivation down here on Earth. On Sunday Morning Live, we're asking, is space exploration a waste of money? Text the word vote, followed by yes or no to 81771. Text will be charged at your standard message rate. You can only vote once. You can go online to vote for free at bbc.co.uk/Sunday Morning Live, and you'll find terms and conditions there too. And results will be announced before the end of the show. So your verdict coming up. First, though, we're going to get some thoughts from our guests this morning who've joined us to discuss the issue. Welcome, everybody. Here with us today, the man of many voices, John Culshaw, who's also an avid amateur, is a writer. So, John first, as you're always looking up there rather than down here, why is it in space?
Well, I think the human race, we are natural explorers. We always push to the limits of our frontiers wherever we can. And this question has always been there. Is it right to spend these vast amounts of money when there are issues that need writing the next chapters of human history? There were problems in 1490. Very important that we keep that bigger picture for one thing.
Beyond, look how much we've learned from going into space.
Yeah, I think we've learned quite a bit, but I think the real problem with this is
you can't
yes.
argue with that, can you? The money.
It'd be fine that people spend more on dog food and cosmetics. And I think if...
Nikki, I mean, you sound like you're against space exploration,
It's
aren't
not
you?
that I'm against it. I think the less manned missions, which evidently cost the most money that we have.
It's got nothing to do with research.
I think it's...
every single industry.
But it was an interesting question. Would you say that...
Anyway, let's go to the National Space Centre in Leicester to see what's firing people up there. Hardy. Shaking your head, John. What would the late, great Sir Patrick Moore have made of this debate, do you think? We respond best to a challenge. Jerry, I mean, the thing is, would the best thing to do, and Nikki was saying, this planet is in a terrible state. So surely what we ought to be doing is looking beyond it and seeing what might be out there that might either help us or where we can all move to.
Minutes in the TARDIS.
It would take 4,000.
If you, I mean, it's enormous progress. I've been going to Calcutta on and off since now, but can afford...
And we heard from Leicester there. Can we say you would
Yes,
go
absolutely.
to Mars?
I would do, yes.
Despite Jerry saying it's a very
I don't see why not.
inhospitable place. How cold is it?
Well, I mean...
Well, I don't know.
We are working...
Helen Laser, they are now working on...
to deal with the bone loss that happens when you're working in zero gravity, muscle wastage, things like...
Research by
It's
going-
over the long term. It was back, we
When
heard
I was
that.
growing up, we were told all about quite unimaginative. But this idea that we have...
Keeping him on his toes. Thank you very much, all of you. Still to come on Sunday Morning Live. The Emmerdale star. If you're physically ill, it's often obvious. Mental illness, which apparently affects 1 in 4 of us, is something else. It's difficult for many people to talk about openly. Perhaps there's a fear of being seen differently, maybe losing out on a job. Well, this week, the government launched a pilot scheme to help people with severe depression and no work find employment. There's any treatment. We're discussing this issue in a moment with, among others, Alistair Campbell, once star as one of the characters of the E4 series Made in Chelsea. Alistair Campbell, who's had bouts of what he describes as the truly horrible illness that is depression, is here. Lisa Rodriguez was a chief executive of the NHS Mental Health Trust in Sussex and has also... Alistair, we heard Ashley James saying there that people say depression when they actually mean sad. So as somebody who's gone through, and how is it different from being unhappy?
Yes, if you add up...
Have a lot of criteria.
Yes, and if you add up the alleged prevalences of all...
Things that are as part of the natural condition. Depressants were dispensed in 1998. By 2012, handed out to the wrong people.
Well, I mean, I obviously don't know the answer. Depression. So there I was on these pills. Luckily, I was able to then seek a talking therapy. And that's really what my stepson, who was diagnosed with schizophrenia and ambivalence, perhaps, if he'd had talking therapy in conjunction with that.
No, the problem is, as you know well, Lisa, talking therapies are expensive.
They are expensive and they're not available for everybody. To the best treatment, which would be a combination of talking therapy.
Lisa and you, Alistair, that because you had serious clinical depression, that it's not taken, perhaps, they are depressed when they clearly are not.
I think that's possible. I mean, I think the...
are being overdiagnosed, it's that problems are being misdiagnosed. So there are people who are missing out on treatment because they're not seen, and perhaps people who are given treatment because they are...
Yes, I mean, the science...
I think a lot of people who...
Would you do that, Lisa? I mean, as somebody who's experienced depression and you as well, and you had your time with anxiety and depression as well, how do you keep a healthy mind? Yes, you're on antidepressants. No, but I mean, it's a serious question. You're talking about the mind and body working together. How else can one...
You do the same thing, Sian. You do the same thing. So you look after...
Very, very psychotic breakdown in the 80s. And
Exercise and food, like you were saying.
Theodore, from a medical perspective, what would your one tip to keeping a healthy mind and on balance?
Don't get it in the first place. Pull yourself together.
Have a pill.
I think first is to know what you mean to be able to make these distinctions.
Okay. Before we move on, we just might say that we have a technical problem with our vote, our text vote
John
today.
By a mile.
What's that?
John Culshaw won by a mile.
You can't say that. I'm not allowed to say. Jerry DeGroot was quite good too. So please stop voting by text. You can still take part in the vote online, so do that instead. bbc.co.uk/Sunday Morning Live. Now, to the rolling hills of Yorkshire, the setting of the popular ITV soap Emmerdale. More specifically, the Woolpack, the pub that seemed to have seen it all. I went there to meet Fiona Wade, the actress behind the flirtatious and sometimes manipulative Priya Sharma. From eating disorders to an arranged marriage, her on-screen character has been through the mill. And when I caught up with her, she explained real life has not always been easy either.
Hello, welcome to the Woolpack.
Thank you. How are you, Fiona?
Very well, thank you.
Right behind the bar. Yes, I will. Have a water.
Hey,
It's
I
quite
haven't done
early.
this for a while.
Marvellous. Thank you very much. Let's go and take a seat. Fiona, thank you for seeing me in the Woolpack.
Oh, thank you for coming.
I'm a bit nervous though because something always happens when you're in the Woolpack. So
I assure you today you're safe.
really, plane crash, armed robbery, the roof has fallen in.
No.
Good, I'm safe today.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Fantastic. We'll talk about some of the interesting storylines you've been in just a moment. But I want to ask first when you started acting, because you're quite young, weren't you?
Yes, I started acting professionally at the age of 16 when I left school. But I've been sort of singing and dancing and acting since I can remember.
And when you were 16, it was Grange Hill, and you must have still been at school, were you?
Just about to do my GCSEs, and this role of Joanna Day came up in Grange Hill. And yeah, it changed my life. It was amazing. But I also got Miss Saigon in the West End at the same time, so it was pretty heavy schedule, you know.
And for a girl in Hertfordshire going to a normal school and being the one presumably that's picked up by a nice car, turns up at premieres and is in the West End and on the television, I mean, how did that go down with your classmates?
You know, secondary school wasn't easy. You know, I always knew what I wanted to do. You know, I was also a minority in terms of ethnic background and everything.
Your background's Filipino,
half
isn't it?
Filipino, half English. But yeah, it was I definitely went through a hard time. I got through it, and it's fine. So,
when you say you got through it, was it particularly difficult?
you know, I don't like to use the word bully as such. You know, I know people go through terrible torments at school, and I don't think it's a word that should be used lightly. But you know, yes, there was a stage. It was, what should I say? You know, it was more difficult. I did lose friends through what I did and everything, and just being different.
How did your parents help you with that?
I remember at the time